Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Closing More Deals with DocSend. For those of you that don't know, DocSend is a secure sharing platform that lets you send, track, and execute critical documents with a single link. My name is Charles Thornton, and I lead product marketing here at DocSend. Today, we're going to cover some sales research findings and hear tips on how DocSend can help you close more deals. Then we're going to have a customer interview, and we'll close with a live product demo with question and answer. Here are our 5 speakers we're going to hear from today. I'm joined by 4 of my colleagues here at DocSend, along with Mark Parkinson from the Center of Management and Organization Effectiveness, also known as CMOE. Before we jump in, please remember to ask your questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and then we will answer them at the end of the webinar. And with that, let's start with Justin Itzo talking about research findings that he has found about sales.
Great, thanks, Charles. Great to be here, everyone. The data I want to speak about today comes from a recent survey we conducted around among over 300 sales professionals about the transition to hybrid, so virtual and in-person sales cycles, and how folks are feeling about them and how deals are closing or not closing in this new environment. So this slide is on the one hand. Right. So on the one hand, people are kind of happy with sorry to say it, the new normal. We found that over half of the salespeople surveyed believe that hybrid sales are going to be the norm, both now and over the next 3 to 5 years. People think that selling virtually actually opens up new opportunities. Once again, over half of the salespeople we surveyed find virtual sales on the whole beneficial to them. On the one hand, they can expand their customer base because virtual selling means access to anyone. And on the other hand, with new media today, we have new channels for staying in contact with prospects. So this on the one hand slide presents kind of a rosy picture. Charles, you can go to the next slide, which predictably is the on the other hand of our research findings. So I presented a kind of optimistic picture right now, and I want to complicate it a bit because, as I say in the headline, despite this optimism, we're still seeing deals regularly falling through. So salespeople reported to us that they're really confident when they're sending out contracts in this new environment. Over 75%, so over 3/4 of the folks we surveyed, believe a deal is going to close once they send out a contract for signatures. And that's a good thing. But the tension lies here. This is where deals often go dark. Nearly half the folks we surveyed say that deals go dark much of the time, so around 25% of the time, which is pretty significant, especially considering how optimistic folks are in the first place about what selling looks like these days. But it gets even more complicated. Over 30% of the folks who participated in our survey said that deals go dark over half the time that they send out contracts for signatures. So on the one hand, we're seeing lots of optimism about what selling virtually looks like these days. But when you scratch the surface, you see that deals are still going dark, despite the new tools that virtual selling in today's environment are supposed to offer us. Charles, you can go to the next slide. Now, why might this be the case? Well, we sort of identified that selling virtually presents unique obstacles that kind of coincide with all the optimism we're seeing today. So selling virtually kind of means identifying warm leads and building meaningful relationships with prospects and customers are challenges. So on the one hand, virtual selling means that we're connected to more people. On the other hand, it can mean that identifying which leads are actually warm and live, quote unquote, is actually harder. Likewise, we're connected to more folks, but actually connecting in meaningful ways with those people might be a bit harder. It's harder to know which connections are genuine these days when all you're doing is speaking over email or over 15-minute Zoom chats. And we found that over 75% of salespeople named these two concerns as their top anxieties when selling virtually. So we've got a picture where virtual selling presents us with a lot of opportunities, and people on the whole find it beneficial. But on the other hand, it's presenting unique anxieties, and deals are going dark in interesting ways almost. And now I want to pass it off to my colleague, Emmy, who will speak about how DocSend actually helps address some of these issues.
Thanks, Justin. Yeah, you geared me right up. With DocSend, there's not any hiccups in communication with these prospects. No big file downloads, nothing gets lost in spam filters. There's no version control issues. Sales reps can share content through a single link, and it doesn't have to require the prospect to sign up for an account to easily view and consume your marketing and sales materials. Our client content stack loves the ability to update content seamlessly. In fact, when a rep finishes a demonstration with a customer, the rep may want to customize the deck based on that conversation. They can simply upload the revised presentation within the branded DocSend space, and the link is updated automatically. Marketing teams also love this because they're able to mass update content so that reps and prospects are always working with the latest and greatest material. When an asset is updated, all the links are updated across DocSend. Charles, next slide. Many of my clients also approach me and say, they turn to Google links to deliver the content, but it doesn't give them any insights into how that content is actually viewed, which is exactly what Justin was talking about. When a DocSend document is delivered and a prospect views it, you're able to see exactly in real time, not only when they view it, but what they've done with that document, how much time they spend on each page. So you're really able to prioritize your follow-ups based on only the people that are opening your links and gear your follow-up directly toward what they're reviewing. SiteTracker has actually got this down to a science. They know that if a prospect spends 30 seconds on a customer logo page, they assume that the prospect is looking for competitors or similar companies. And as a result, the rep can queue up a story or a case study that the marketing team has developed to follow up with during their next call. The marketing team can also look at aggregate data so that they can optimize their pre-sale and post-sale collateral. After a few deals, they'll be able to assess whether a new slide order or an updated image is actually being engaged with. Next slide, Charles. I also hear that many of the reps spin the wheels, kind of like what Justin was alluding to, where we don't really know where to focus our time. We don't know, for example, who's actually a decision maker, or is the champion actually reading that ROI deck that I spent so much time on? DocSend allows you to see which deals are actively reviewing and know if new stakeholders are being introduced to your pitch, so you can strategically follow up and close the deal faster. Campus used some of the content coaching that our account management team gave them to structure a proposal for a 7-figure deal. The prospect viewed the proposal, and the campus team was able to discern which of the pricing options the customer was most interested in, and where each decision maker was focused on that same proposal. DocSend really helped them tailor their pitch and negotiate much more effectively in their next meeting with the prospects. DocSend also can monitor inactive links that you may have disabled when a customer says no for now. When my clients are notified that an old deal is visiting past pricing proposals, they call them up right away and restart an evaluation that they never would have known was a priority again without DocSend. And with that, I think it's time to hear from Taft and Mark.
Great. Yeah, so just passing it off. So Taft Love is the head of sales for DocSend, and we're joined by Mark Parkinson, the VP of Sales Enablement for CMOE. So I will let you both take it from here.
Hi, Mark, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Pleasure.
So let's set the stage. What is CMOE, and can you give us a little more color around what does that title mean?
Definitely. CMOE provides performance solutions for our clients in the area of L&D, learning and development. We design and implement custom offsite workshops, live virtual events, digital e-learning modules for our clients. We really concentrate on 5 areas. coaching, leadership, teamwork, and strategy, and DE and I.
Okay, thanks for the context there. So one thing I'm hearing is there's lots of communication with external parties as
Sure.
a necessity in your business. So before we talk about DocSend, let's hear a little bit about what you used for external sharing before you made the switch to DocSend.
So this will date me, but I was at Adobe in the old days when, and I was licensing PDF libraries and Acrobat to clients. And, we thought it was pretty special that we could make a small PDF file and then email it to people. And frankly, that's what we were mostly doing. For if I was sending, say, 10 PDFs to a client, maybe I'd use WeTransfer, but, no transparency other than, Outlook perhaps kindly telling me that the person has opened the file or opened their email. I had no transparency. You send off that RFP response or that proposal, and we joke about it going into a black hole. And then you become that pesky salesperson that's knocking down their door. Hey, can I answer any questions on the proposal I sent over? And, it was just, we thought it was great until we came along and found DocSend, and it really solved a lot of problems for us.
One of the golden rules that we talk about on the sales team at DocSend is don't just check in or follow up. Have real reasons for reaching out to people, because otherwise it feels self-serving. If I'm not checking in on you, I want to know whether you're going to buy. And so,
the dreaded check-in.
Absolutely. So so that brings us to the switch to DocSend. So can you tell me a little bit about what your workflow is with DocSend?
So typically when we send out, so let's say we have a new web lead come in, and typically, not always, but typically they will name an area that they're interested in. So one of our very popular workshops is applied strategic thinking. It falls into our strategy category, right? And I have 4 or 5 spaces in DocSend that are centered by subject. So, I will send that particular person, maybe I've myself or one of my team has left a voicemail for them. So I'll send them an email saying, hey, here's what we call our content portal. And if they click into that, they will see the strategy category at the top with all of our strategy products. But I love it because I always include our entire library of content. And, inevitably they scroll down and, oh, you do coaching as well. Oh, wow, we're really interested in team alignment or whatever. So it's just a great way to, when they get it, they think it's been made specifically for them. And there is kind of that element of versioning or personalization, but that's how we use it early on. Now, let's say that moves along well and the client is ready for a proposal. Either myself or one of my team will go ahead and take that, a particular space, and, you can duplicate them and then jump in there and add client name and make that space client specific. We'll often add a new category now at the top of the page that says something like working documents. And now there's a proposal in there. Eventually there'll be a statement of work. Maybe there's some other ancillary documents that we would send along for that person interested in that particular subject.
Okay, so one thing to clarify for people who might not know spaces, a space is a single link behind which multiple documents are housed. So instead of one link to one document, it's one link to basically a landing page where documents are housed, maybe 2 documents, maybe nested folders and hundreds of documents. So it sounds like you have lots of content behind these space links that you're sending out at the top of the funnel. Is that accurate?
Most definitely. Yeah.
Is it helpful at all as you're sending these out to understand what they're clicking on and where they're spending time?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, when I sat through the first pitch, if you will, from DocSend, this was probably 2.5 years ago.
Mhm.
And I had to stop him and say, wait a sec. So you're saying when they go into that proposal, I'm going to get an email saying, hey, Mark, they're looking at your proposal.
Mhm.
And I mean, for us, it was a game changer, you know. It's one of those tools. I mean, we're Dynamics users. We use a number of different technologies in our stack, but, you know, most of them I think we could reproduce. If we weren't using Dynamics, we'd be using HubSpot or Salesforce.com. Whereas this, if you took this away from us, I mean, maybe you do have competitors. I haven't found them, but you know, it really would take a huge part of our what I think competitive advantage. It's a mind blower to me. I mean, we are a small organization, and it's a mind blower to me that larger organizations, and I'm sure there are some that do use it for sales, but once a salesperson sees the power behind being able to know who, you know, who's looked at it, how long have they spent? I mean, it'll even tell you by page, well, our proposals, they're having that intelligence that they spent X amount of time on page 4. You know, I know right away, I know our proposals well enough. Oh, he or she is interested in this. So when we have that next conversation, you know, that's what I zero in on.
Mhm.
And it's almost an unfair advantage. I mean, salespeople have always been, you know, at an unfair advantage because we don't know what's going on. But
Mhm.
this levels the playing field. Let's put it that way.
So I'm going to go off script here and ask a question that some people might be thinking. This is great for the salesperson. Have you ever run into a situation where somebody doesn't like being tracked? Have you ever had people have issues with that?
You know, I gotta say, I don't know that I mean, maybe they don't like being tracked. And I've certainly had times when I've sent it out that they haven't accessed it. And
Mhm.
perhaps in that, you know, situation, they looked at it and said, I'm not giving him my name and my email, you know.
Sure.
But frankly, it's a qualification tool. If
Mhm.
they're not willing to give me first name, last name, and an email address, then they're not a buyer. And you know, I'm okay with that. I mean, I'm one of these sales people. I believe getting to know is very important, because if I can get to know with a prospect, then I can move on to someone who might eventually say yes. So
That makes sense. Okay, so you mentioned something. We had a conversation prepping for this a week or two ago, and you mentioned something that I thought was really interesting. You said that DocSend is viral by nature. Can you elaborate on that?
oh yeah, this is huge too. I mean, especially in learning and development, I mean, we have very large clients, and this is true for medium-sized clients as well, but especially large clients. Every large organization you go into, their L&D configuration looks different. Some companies, it's driven by HR. Some companies who are maybe a little more enlightened have a CLO and actually have a learning department, and you know, maybe an academy or a university. Oftentimes our clients are just an engineering manager that's had it up to here with his people, and you know, he's not talking internally to any learning people. He just does a search one day, finds us and says, hey, I need to do a team alignment. So it's not rare for us to talk to gatekeepers or, you know, assistants or people that aren't the decision makers. But the beauty about DocSend is, and I usually state this, and in our email templates, I state this, hey, you know, forward this to relevant stakeholders and colleagues. And you don't have to download a PDF and send a PDF. You know, you can just forward the link. And so inevitably, here we, you know, now I get an email saying, so-and-so is looking at it. That isn't the person I sent it to. I jump into LinkedIn. Oh, wow, VP of Finance. Okay, this is a serious buyer. So yeah, that viral nature and the way it's so easy for them. Another part of that whole viral thing is I have counseled and kind of coached prospects. They'll say, oh, next week I'm going into a meeting to pitch this idea to my superiors. So I tell them, just have the DocSend open on your desktop. And, you don't need to prepare a PowerPoint. You can just show them directly from DocSend. And again, I'm knowing when they do that. So it's a beautiful thing. I love the transparency.
Absolutely. That makes sense. I love hearing how you're using it. And so a last thing that I'd like to understand, sometimes we hear people talk about how DocSend impacts their brand. So can you speak to that a little bit?
By all means. This is another kind of side benefit that it took us a little while to realize was happening, but we do a fair amount of work with Esignature. And when we first started talking to Esignature, I had a person, one of our main contacts, say, "Oh, I love that little content portal you have," And he said, "We talk to so many companies that are small, and it's kind of hokey, and they're missing emails, and they're not very good on the technology. And frankly, it makes us look like a much bigger company than we are." People listening to this webinar may not be aware that you can brand your instance of DocSend, and yeah, it just makes you look like you have your shit together much more than you may have.
That makes sense. Okay, so Mark, we're about out of time here, but before we go, any last words, anything you want to share about CMOE or anything before we pass it off?
Yeah, and I mean, anyone who's in sales and use a fairly limited stack, I would say definitely consider DocSend. I mean, this is not a paid promotion. I'm quite excited about this technology, if you can't tell. It just adds transparency to those activities. Whether or not your clients are engaged, and it's just made a huge difference for us here at CMOE.
Well, Mark, thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming on and sharing. And we're out of time now, so I think we're handing it off to Noah, I believe.
Thanks, Taft, and everyone else.
Excellent. Well, thanks, guys. My name is Noah Griffin. I'm an account rep here at DocSend, and I'm going to take you through a quick demonstration of the DocSend platform. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. Hopefully everybody can see that. So let's take a look at DocSend through the eyes of a sales rep. So imagine we just had a great call with a prospect and walked them through an overview of the DocSend platform. And on that call, I learned the customer had some critical pain points, which included things like security, controlling sensitive documents that they were sending out externally, and long sales cycles. So since we covered a lot of that information in the sales presentation that we reviewed, I'm going to send that deck over to my prospect so they can review it and share it with the team. So we're in Gmail now, and we're drafting up that follow-up email for the prospect. And as sales reps, we're all used to using this attach files button right here, right? And we have to go search for our documents and find the right ones to add to our email. Well, DocSend has recognized that we worked out of our email quite a bit. So we've created a Chrome extension for Gmail and an Outlook add-in where you can quickly access your DocSend account through your email template. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight the presentation right here. I'm going to click on that DocSend plugin, and it's going to take me to my DocSend account where I have access to all the folders that house our external facing content. So this sort of becomes our single source of truth that everything that I want to send externally is going to be housed in these folders. Now I can also use the search bar to search by name of the document or by tags such as marketing or sales. We also have these sections right here for recently used content, most engaging, newly added. But for the purposes of this email, we are going to add in the product walkthrough deck. Now, if I've sent a link to my contact before, it's automatically going to populate their account name into DocSend, which is great. But if I haven't, I always have the option to add in a new account or create a new account here, or even link it to Salesforce if you're using that CRM and you want to track that activity. But for the purposes of this demonstration, we're going to go ahead and just select Acme Corp and then go ahead and set the link settings here. So I'm going to check this box for require email to view, because that's going to be the gate for entry to track who's accessing my content. I'm not going to check allow downloading because I want to see how they're engaging with my presentation here. And then we also have expiration dates and passcodes, which is really helpful if you're sending things like presentation or proposals that may expire at the end of the month. If we scroll down here, we have some of these advanced features for some of our sensitive content. Now, if this was sensitive content, this is where I think DocSend really shines. So we have the ability with these access controls to essentially restrict access by email address or email domain. We can also check this box for email authentication to have them verify their email when they plug it in to go access our content. And to the recipient, it's really easy, right? There's no logins, there's no passwords, they're still accessing via their email address. But on the sender side, I can really control who has access to the content that I'm sending over to my client or prospect here. So if we scroll down a little bit further, we've got the dynamic watermark feature, which allows us to add any of these variables here or some custom language to every single page of my document. We can also enable an NDA to view ahead or agree to and before we enter into the document. So you have the option of selecting a number of different NDAs that you upload to the DocSend platform. And I think what's key here with this one-click NDA is it really streamlines the NDA process. So you're really not having to use a third-party service to access or to send over an NDA. It's part of the gate of entry here to access the document. So since this is not a sensitive document, I'm just going to go ahead and generate the link here. And now you see the link in the email. Now, if I send it off, this is what the recipient sees on their end. We are asking them to plug in their email address one time, and we'll put a cookie on their browser. So if they come back tomorrow or the next week, we won't ask for it again. Now they're able to view the document in the DocSend viewer, where we are tracking how long they are staying on each one of these slides within the DocSend viewer. So once they're done looking at it, we're going to send you the rep an email letting them know, hey, somebody just accessed your product walkthrough deck, and now you can go back into the DocSend platform to view some of the data. Now there's 3 levels of data that we are going to provide here for you, and the first level is going to be at the document level. So if we scroll to the, if we go to the product walkthrough and scroll down to the link that I just created, unfortunately, there are no visits here, unfortunately. But say, for instance, I sent this out last week, and now I can see that Danny, who's my main contact, might have sent this out to a few people because I have 5 different visits here. And now as I scroll up, I can see here that Charles was the most recent visit at that company. And if I click this button on the right here, we can see how Charles spent that minute. So really helpful to understand where Charles spent most of his time. I can prepare for any questions. It looks like he spent most of his time on the one-click NDA. Maybe I'll be a little bit proactive and send him over some customer stories of similar clients that are utilizing our one-click NDA feature. Now, the next level of data is going to be a document performance level. So this is the aggregate view of how the document is doing amongst everyone on the team that is using it. So I think, as we mentioned before, marketing teams really like this information because now they can see, what's really resonating with our clients and prospects when it comes to this deck, allowing us to, maybe change some of the things within the document or make edits, and hopefully have some success as we have here with the latest version doing a little bit better than the last one since we've updated it. Now, the last level of data that we provide is at the account level. So if I click into Acme Corp here, I can see all the visitors that have interacted with my documents. And I can also answer questions such as, what is the content that I've sent to this client over time, and what has been most engaged with? And if I scroll here, this is sort of an audit trail of everything that I've sent over to the client and what they've looked at. And I can see that the product walkthrough has been the most popular here. Additionally, I can find out among those visitors if there's anybody potentially new that Danny has sent this link over to. And I can see here, I found out that Jennifer is the CFO at Acme. I wouldn't have known this information if I wasn't using DocSend. So what we're really doing here is helping sales reps uncover additional stakeholders to help shorten those sales cycles and really understand who's involved in the evaluation process. So let's fast forward a week, say that they're interested in moving forward with DocSend. They just need to see some security information as well as a proposal for DocSend. So I'm going to go over to Spaces. Now, Spaces is a great way to share multiple files over time with a prospect or customer. And the concept for Spaces is simple. I think Taff mentioned it's just one link to multiple documents here. So we can go here to Acme Corp, where I've created a space for Acme. And you can see I've created different sections here with a general DocSend overview, a section for security, so we can check off all those boxes of what they're concerned about, as well as an agreement here for the service with DocSend. Additionally, I've added my manager here, so he has access to the content. He can add any documentation. Might also be helpful to add an account manager if I'm going to be handing this over, so they can continue to use this data room to share documents with this particular client. Now, from the client perspective, what they see is this room here full of all the documents that I created for this virtual data room. So this looks very clean on their end, sort of just looks like a general website. It's very organized, and it's a really better experience and better organization overall for that client, where they can search for specific files and access the files that they want. And we can give you a notification for everything that they open. So as Mark said, if they are opening up that order form, I understand that they're getting ready to make a move and move forward and close on that opportunity. So overall, I think you can see here that DocSend is a great way to share documents externally, identify client and prospect engagement, and really uncover additional stakeholders and hopefully help you close more deals. So with that, I'm done here. I'm going to hand this back off to Charles so he can wrap up.
Great. Thank you, Noah. That was awesome. Let me share my screen. A second. Oops. Excuse me. Yeah, and now we go to the last section, the Q&A. Last reminder, if you want to share any questions you have, we were happy to answer them right now. So the first question we have, where can I link to from other data sources? Can someone take that in terms of like Dropbox or Box, or what data sources can we link to from DocSend?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this one. So within DocSend, you have a few options for linking to other data sources. So you can hook to storage from Microsoft, Dropbox, Box, and others. And you also have the ability to upload documents directly from your machine. So the way to think of DocSend is a sending layer on top of your storage. So that's the sort of perfect use case for DocSend is how you share externally when you need visibility, control, or security on those documents, which is rarely something people think about internally, but externally is a common concern.
Great. And then one more question we have, how do I update content? Do I need to send a new link? I think the question is asking about, like, if you have a new version of a document, do you need to kind of get a new link and send it to the person?
I'm happy to answer. We went over this during my section. So it's really easy to update content in DocSend. Instead of sending a brand new link with that document, there's an update new version button right there in DocSend. And as soon as you upload that new version, it'll populate wherever that link lives. So if you've already sent it out, new version is updated. If you're going to send a new one, it'll send the new version.
Amy, you have a good story about this. Do you want to tell it?
I do.
Okay.
So one of my favorite stories to tell to my clients is that I actually use this all the time, not only for correcting typos, but also for moments where DocSend saved my career. So in one of my deals that I was working, we were working heavily on red lines, and I upload those red line versions to DocSend so that I can track when someone downloads them and accesses them to send to their legal team. Now, my team had sent me over a version of the red lines that we were just working on with some internal comments. If I had sent that without DocSend, that prospect that I was working with would have had a very big advantage in seeing those comments. So luckily, Taft actually caught that I had sent over that version, and we were able to quickly replace it with the original. And we knew that the client hadn't seen it because of DocSend's tracking. So really saved my career in that case.
Great. And this looks like a follow-up question. Are the DocSend links email security friendly?
So I'll take this one again. You're probably, a lot of people often when they're introduced to DocSend think of us similarly to a DocuSign or a PandaDoc. And the big difference between DocSend and all of the apps that you're used to is the dynamic that with DocSend, you don't send an email via DocSend to your recipient. So when you send a DocuSign, they send an envelope for signature. With DocSend, you generate a link and you paste that link into your email. So as long as your email is being delivered, so basically we're leveraging your email deliverability to get this link in the hands of your prospects, you're fine. So you actually don't have to worry about us getting caught in spam filters. So this is and presumably anyone to whom you're sending a DocSend link is someone with whom you're already having a conversation. So you probably have a thread going. And so essentially the likelihood of DocSend being caught in spam is 0.
Great, and that actually answers the next question that Kevin had for us. Do you have issues with your emails links getting caught up in spam filters? The last tool we used had major issues with this. It sounds like because you send it yourself, it's your email address getting through your recipient spam filters. That's not an issue.
Some of our clients even get creative with how they deliver the links. I have a client that sends their DocSend space that they've curated for their client in a Zoom chat. So they already get the link. It's not even delivered via email. So you can also get creative. They're not tied to the email.
Great. I think that was our last question. Unless people have anything else, last chance, or else we can wrap up. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you, Mark from CMOE. Thank you for everyone who tuned in. This is great, and we really appreciate you tuning in to our webinar today with DocSend. So with that, thank you very much.